Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments.
Someone quick thing. I just want to let you know that the website for the math department has been revamped, and so ready for Eureka for the teacher end and parent end. So we're still like putting in some pieces, but just wanted to let you know that that was complete. And I'm going to do that for you.
Any other public comments? All right, agenda review. I think we have the art curriculum missing off of our agenda here. So, wondering if we could put that directly after the agenda review. Is everybody okay with that? Sure. And then there are now 2 consent items.
Yes.
Any other changes, suggestions, edits to the agenda? All right, that will bring up art. You're on.
Do you want to drive the thing and I'll just
I'll scroll down.
Okay. So hopefully you all got the document that we sent you earlier in the summer. The new art curriculum, we basically have revamped the old one to meet the new core art standards as well as align with competencies. So
the first section is the rationale, where we just talked about the importance of the arts in education. And then second is our mission statement. That was something we really pared way down and just got it to its most central point, which is it's our mission to nurture the innate creativity each child naturally possesses.
Okay, so the art program at DCS, as many of you may know, for kindergarten through 6th grade is a choice-based program that is loosely based off of both Artist Workshop and Teaching for Artistic Behavior, which is another choice-based program. We incorporate, as we said, choice. We track students by doing what's called status of the class, where we track what they're working on weekly in terms of their subject matter and choice, so that they're not repeating things and they're like stretching themselves. Can you just go through a little bit, Jess? And what am I missing here?
The status. Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the status is their choice of medium and choice of subject on whatever they're working on, and that adds another level of accountability, because a choice-based program sometimes can be like a free-for-all if you don't have these checks and balances in place. So the status of the class is a really important data collection tool that we use to not only track each class, but also at the end of each term, that's how we go back and kind of look through their portfolio and assign grades to their competencies. Here we go.
So along with this, students participating in critiques, which goes back to the part of the National Core Art Standards, which we call them new, but they're 6 or 7 years old now. They're not new anymore. Which is creating, responding, connecting, and performing. So responding and connecting, they're responding about their own work and their peers' work, and connecting to what they've learned in class in terms of movements, art history, artists, techniques, that sort of thing. And then in 7th and 8th grade, the program shifts up a little bit, and students are given 1 trimester of choice, and then they have a trimester of 2D and a trimester of 3D. And that's in order to prepare them for when they go on to high school, where they start to lose that choice. Those are more project-based classes.
Let's see. I think the next section is, these are all the rubrics for each of the competencies.
And grade levels.
Yeah, grade levels, yeah. So they're all, I'm pretty sure all the links were, yeah. we took all of this information directly from the National Core Arts Standards, which are aligned with the New Hampshire Arts Model Competencies. So we just took what they had and put it into our documents so that they're all aligned.
Do you want to talk about this? I know we just stopped. This part is about the essential environment, expectations of responsibility. We treat every student as an artist, and it's the student's responsibility to work thoughtfully on their work, to come in with ideas, share their ideas, and do their work in the classroom. As teachers, we model those techniques for them. We show students different art techniques. We also demonstrate how to respond to artwork. We encourage them to explore different art media and different ideas through inquiry, and to be responsible by cleaning up their tools and taking care of their work.
And then I think another piece of the responsibility is once they finish with their piece, and this is part of the presenting competency, is that they mount their work on a background, they title it, they say what medium it is, and then they often will present that to the class as a verbal share, and kids will comment back and forth, and then it gets hung up in the classroom. So I feel like I know Sarah feels this way too, like everything is intertwined. So the creating competency is included in all the different steps, whether it's making the art or showing the art or presenting the art or talking about art. Same thing with all the other competencies. They're all just intertwined and they work together.
And it's part of So yeah, this section is really just going through the different competencies, which again are creating, responding, connecting, and presenting, which are exactly what they say they are.
Right.
I don't know that we need to define them. Creating is making stuff, responding and connecting, talking about their artwork, being able to connect their own work to different art periods or different artists, that sort of thing.
Or pure artists.
Yep, and presenting is displaying their artwork, critiquing their artwork. I think that's it.
And there is I know that you guys read this, but there's that section that describes exactly what goes on in the classroom when kids come in there, and that I feel like really paints a better picture of what the experience is like when they're in there.
One thing we don't address, I feel like I talked about this, Nate, with you, with the curriculum, in the curriculum community. One thing we don't necessarily address outright in this is technology, but we weave technology into the art room in so many different ways. We weave it in through, as an art media, we've done digital printing, we've done animation, so we're using it in different ways like that. We also weave it in using different videos to talk about art history or things like that, obviously as part of grading and communication. So it kind of, that piece, I don't think we talk about it outright, but we're using it all the time. It's just another piece of the right. You guys have any questions for us? Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that my understanding is that in a given grade, like second grade, you're both doing some second grade classes.
Yes,
right?
we do.
And so I guess my question is, do you feel like you have adequate opportunity to take, let's say, a particular piece of artwork or a student's project, and both of you look at it and calibrate so that you're both looking at, well, what is a 3 versus a 4? Are you able to be consistent across, so, you know, a 3 in second grade art in this particular competency doesn't mean the same thing from you that it does from you. Do you feel like you have those opportunities in your professional development time?
I would say that, I don't know that we've had that necessarily formally. I think Jess and I are always, I mean, our rooms, if you've seen, they're right next to each other. We go plan together. We're always touching base. So I think informally we probably do that. We haven't formally done that.
Right.
To answer your question, but informally we're always talking about students and work and what's going on, and what do you think, and
Right, and we'll often actually we'll send students back and forth
to conference with another.
Right. Go show this to Miss Chase or go, we do that at least
Probably
once a day.
yeah.
Right.
Very quick question. Well, it's not a quick question, but thank you. This looks really good. You touched briefly on art history. Do you guys integrate that into the curriculum with any of the other teachers, like the middle school social studies, talking about?
We've done occasionally. It depends on the year. So, and actually, we had a section we breezed through, which we really didn't
Right.
talk about with that. But so we've done projects with John Flad about New York and different New York artists or different movements that have happened in New York before.
Right.
Not every single year, but we've done that in the past. When Kim Piper was here, I did a whole project. Actually, that tile mural project that's in the hallway was based on To Kill a Mockingbird, and she and I collaborated, and they did tiles that were representative of that in my room while reading and discussing that book in her room. Jess has done, you've done some things.
Well, we did that thing with first grade when they did those shadow paintings, and then we did the whole lesson on Keith Haring with that.
Right. And that was, Cindy, those were shadows was that science?
Yeah, that was one of our.
Yeah. So we have worked
Yeah.
with other teachers in different areas.
Awesome. It's just great to hear like how
Yeah.
that can all integrate.
Yeah, and it really depends on the year and which teachers I feel like every year is a little different.
Right,
So some years
right.
it's one teacher, some years it's another.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do I sign out of this?
Probably,
All right.
unless you want them to have access to all your Google Docs.
No!
You notice we didn't have the PTO on there, the barbecue. We should probably talk about that. But we should. I would entertain we had a presentation for the art curriculum. I'd entertain a motion to accept the art curriculum. Second. Any additional discussion on the presented art curriculum? All in favor of adopting the art curriculum as presented? Aye. Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. We are moving on to habits of learning presentation, but I did want to touch base with the board quickly because I realized we don't have PTO on our agenda again, and we have a barbecue next Monday. We probably should talk about that. So if you guys are open to adding one more thing to the agenda, informational items, is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Habits of learning presentation. Who do we have?
That's Kristen and myself.
All right.
So she's just logging in, so it'll take 1 minute. I believe everybody has a copy of the slides as well. Here.
I can pull them up. Those are in there. There.
So thank you to our Habits of Learning team, and we have a few members here in the audience who put this presentation together. They've really done all the work. I'm just here presenting it. As you know, Habits of Learning will be on the report card this coming up school year. The competencies will be laid out for you. And I think the work is rooted in what the team felt the vision of a DCS graduate looked like. So as you can see, there's a lot of information there that helped the team, that drove the team as they were creating what the competencies would look like. The work that was done on the Habits of Learning, it was rooted in the mission statement, which they had on the front of it, inspiring each student to think, learn, achieve, create, and care. They used elements from previous work habits structure that they had in place, developed the vision of a DCS graduate and the current 21st century skills. And more importantly, the Habits of Learning outlines the progression of skills to build students into lifelong independent learners.
So essentially, when this started, we started off soft last year. We had a team of representatives from all different grades, we had PE teachers, special ed, different grade level reps, and we try to collect as much data from them. What are they seeing in their classrooms? We also, that committee then met with students from different grade levels, figure out what they themselves as students were learning and what they felt their needs were. And then we also met with parents, and I think some of you guys on the board were here for one of the parent nights, information nights on that as well. So essentially, the work habits and the behaviors are essential to the academic success. So in order to be successful here, having these skills is going to allow it to happen. And the competencies are designed consistent monitoring by the teachers. They know, some of the teachers know their kids better than their own parents know their kids. So they spend sometimes more time with them. So they have an idea of who their children are in their class and how they are as a learner. And so that allows them to then generate and using the rubrics to present that information to parents. So when it comes time for the report cards and for the parent-teacher conferences, all this is in place, and the teachers can give that feedback to the parents in a nice, orderly fashion. Everything is backed by rubrics, and that was all designed by the committee, and a lot of time and care was taken into when they created all this. So again, when you're reporting out, it's reported out by the classroom teacher, so K to 5, and then from 6 to 8 is their core teachers. So if your child's in middle school, you'll get one from math teacher, one from social studies teacher. So you'll see that all reported out onto, and include the IAs. And IAs do it a little bit different. They split up their students into trimesters, so they'll take a third, a third, and a third. Because for the report card, for the IA teachers, report out on 200, I guess up to 260, 270 kids would be a daunting task. So, so they split that into thirds, because they, for the most part, all have about 50-50 when it comes to the amount of kids in the building.
So this is a rubric that lays out the information that lays out the habits of learning competencies and the performance indicators. The rubrics are coming next. And it divides it by grade level, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8. So as you can see, some of the competencies are not assessed in grades K to 2. We'll go through that a little bit more. But the 4 work habits being self-direction and work habits, reflecting about your learning, communication, and collaboration, and innovation and creativity. And then underneath all of that, you can see performance indicators. In K2, we're expecting self-direction and work habits, them to work hard, show self-control, do their best, complete tasks on time, and as well as communication and collaboration. Very similar wording. As we go down in 3rd through 5th, we're looking for them to persist, keep working at a topic, demonstrate self-control, strive for accuracy, personal best, prioritizing, and then you can see each one as we go. And then teachers then develop I can statements for all of those as well.
So this is, and each of these have a link to every single rubric. You can go through them if you'd like, or this is essentially just a sample. All the links do work, and we'll put this up on the website for.
Would you mind going through it?
Yeah. So this is the K-2. So again, everything's broken down into, down here you see level 1, so now you're competent, respiratory competent, and level 4 advanced competent. These are your performance indicators over here.
To our next item ahead of board goals.
Yes.
Is that okay with that? Yes. Andrea,
It's school board barbecue.
school board barbecue.
Not the field barbecue.
You guys, yeah,
I
okay.
just have some questions that I want please answered, and then I have the shopping list and everything else all set up. Did Parks and Rec gonna let us use the other grill?
Yes,
And who's gonna pick that up?
they will bring it. We have to provide propane.
They will bring it?
Yes.
That's what the email said from Kristen.
Okay.
So they're gonna bring it to the site?
They said they could drive it over, but it's our propane.
Okay. And who will
They
get
picking it
that?
up or we bringing it back?
We don't have 4 tanks.
We have 2 tanks?
For
Okay,
the
I
one that we
can-
bought.
I have an extra tank.
I have an extra tank
I
I
do
can
too.
bring.
I can fill
You
it.
got the tank?
I will bring a tank.
Can we bring a tank?
Yeah, if we
Okay, I can
both
bring a
bring a tank, we have a,
You said you'll bring a tank,
See
Shelley?
that?
And
These guys
how
gonna be all over
in
the
there
issue.
you gonna get the other grill too?
That was my trailer.
So you'll be able to get it here for free?
And if Parks and Recs falls through, just let me know ahead of time.
We can go pick it up.
I'll pick it up.
Okay.
And you have 2 tanks for that one too?
Yes.
Brian has
I have them here on property.
Brian has to.
Better fill the tank.
Full?
One of mine isn't.
On the day of the barbecue, can someone run to get 75 pounds of ice? It could be 3 25 bags. And they don't sell them at Mr. Mike's, you have to go to Hannaford's.
Nope, 3.
I can do that during the day.
I'm coming home past like Market Basket. I can just
It's got to be there early to ice stuff.
Well, it has to be there at 3, are you gonna be there at 3, Nate?
as close as I can.
I can get the ice for you.
You wanna bring ice?
Yep. What do you need? 75?
Yes, please.
Has anybody looked at the long-term forecast at this point?
I did
Are we-
87 degrees on Sunday, but that
Nice.
doesn't mean,
I'm gonna check the day before.
no,
Bit of
it's
rain.
still 5 days out.
Right.
okay, do we have like a, is the food already,
I have the shopping list. The PTO was wondering if maybe we each brought a huge pasta salad, would you guys be opposed to? I don't know if we could make pasta salad for 600, but I'm willing to try, you know what I mean?
So what do you need?
We will bring it, but you guys think that's a bad idea, because I don't know if there will be enough for 600.
that's like a 55-gallon drum of pasta
I
salad.
have pasta. You want elbows?
Are you gonna bring a pasta salad?
I did not say I'd make a
No,
pasta.
I have pasta too, Shelley. I'm
Okay,
gonna bring
I was
my
just
own
trying to
pasta.
unload some pasta, but okay.
It sounds
'Cause you add,
super ambitious. Do you want to?
I can't cook
well,
that much.
here's the thing, you run out, and then you tell those in line that didn't know it was there, it does add forks, but we do have forks too.
So what did we do last year? Last year was it just
It
burgers?
was burgers, dogs,
And chips.
chips, watermelon, and freeze pops. I added cookies because we don't have freeze pops.
Is, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I agree with you, if you don't make enough, which would be incredibly ambitious, then you detract from the experience.
We still have to do forks anyways to do some pastas.
I'll make some pasta salad. I'll make a.
It's a 55-gallon.
No, I mean, if it's like collectively, if like 10 people are doing it, or
Right, that's what I thought. A ton of people, if you figured, you know,
I think you're better off without.
I
a
think
pound of pasta feeds
my-
about 10 to 12 people.
my gut is I will leave it at the discretion of the PTO. If you guys want to take that on, we would appreciate it. However, we are not asking for it.
And if we run out, is anyone gonna be upset?
No.
Okay, then we'll keep that on there. Name tags, I'm gonna make name tags, so who you are, last name's okay with everyone, does anyone not want their last name on it?
No, we're fine. Candy made us some name tags last year.
Why don't you take,
Can I have his last name?
why don't you take my tag, Bill?
Just last minute. We got a pen.
Barbecue tools, how many do you have, right, if there's 4 grillers, we need 4 of everything,
I have a set I can bring.
and there's 2 sets in the trailer. Alright. And we do need 2 extra coolers, 2 more coolers. I have 3 big ones, I need 2 more.
I have a
You
big,
want
huge one.
I got the one for you.
I have a big one on wheels,
Okay.
Sounds really nice.
lights up. Disco ball.
Nice.
And then the last thing, I need something super long to stir the 5-gallon buckets, which I know you guys don't think, but there
Like a
really
fork?
isn't, like, you just can't get a ladle. You need something that gets to the bottom of those 5. Anyone have anything that would reach the
Are you
bottom of
talking
5
like
gallons?
What's in the box?
Stir what?
For our lemonade.
Get a canoe paddle.
You need a paddle.
Canoe paddle.
We need something.
You,
So
honestly, a
anyone have
kid,
something
You
that
would
Canoe
be able to do
paddle.
a canoe paddle.
a little kid canoe paddle.
Well, it has to be cleaner than
I
that.
know.
You wash it.
Does,
Lysol
Do
wipes.
we have something in the, is there something
No,
in,
we tried last year too, and there was nothing.
there's nothing in the kitchen with all that commercially?
It sounds like something Sharon's husband has in a shed somewhere.
There's gotta be some.
You have something? Can we borrow something long enough to
Quarter
spare?
seven.
Make sure it's clean. Alright, so,
I'm fascinated by what's in the shed.
or the that was all my questions. I will copy this all so you know what to bring, and I'll see you all at 3.
So we're gonna have what we need to bring? Is there anything else? We need to bring food or anything? Or?
No, you don't, and you're not signed up to bring anything, you just have to be here for it.
How did I manage that?
You weren't here last week.
Propane.
You're bringing a propane
I'm
tank.
bringing propane. Do you want help with
And if we're trading for Brian has 2 tanks.
Yes.
I said that they would bring it over.
I'm still in my basement, so.
We don't know who's gonna pick it up. Ping them and do
So
that.
want the 2 easy ups?
If you need me, call me.
No, because we have a
And get it.
cross-country one that's here. Okay.
Amy said she
Unless
could
it
get it
rains,
if they
if
don't
it
show up.
rains, bring your easy ups. I guess that's the only thing. I'll just cover the trailer just in case it's hot.
If it rains, are we just cooking outside and putting it all in the calf? Is that the plan? I don't know.
We could do it like you guys did for the barbecue.
Cook outside.
You and your family were cooking out back, and everybody's eating the cafeteria.
Or Jim.
If it rains, we can do it like.
Right, but if it doesn't rain, we're not.
I'm sitting. I'll be in the RV. I'll be.
Don't expect us to watch the kids on the playground.
We can all sit up in the
Only if it
RV.
rains.
Hello.
Alright,
We did that
and
one day.
Trish, I will photocopy the list, and you can go get it this weekend. Does that work? Yep. Alright, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Does anybody need it? Because I wasn't here last week. Is there anybody that needs help with their list? I know she'll call me. She doesn't. Do you want to do a list or look a little back?
My list with what? Of things that I
I
need
don't
to
know
bring?
what you signed up for.
I know what I signed.
I need 10 pounds of lobster,
No,
5 pounds of steak tips.
that's on Tuesday.
It's all the talk.
All right, we are on to our board goals. Did you guys all Nate and I went back and forth a couple of times on board goals drafts. Did you guys get those?
On the drive, and they should be in the packet.
Yeah, they're in the packets.
We're gonna go through these and talk about each one.
You should, well, we're gonna vote on them tonight, whether or not we want to adopt these as our goals. So,
Or change for one.
yeah,
Well, I just, 3B, you know,
I agree with the goal. I just want to have a discussion about how we're going to go about that. Because of, you know, we started the, and stop me if you want to, you know, take these in order, but if you want to talk about it right now, that's,
well, yeah, so why don't we go, we'll just take them in order so that we don't jump around, so.
Yeah.
Why don't we go through one, curriculum, competency-based education. A is determine current status by continuing to look at data. Monitor the new math program through feedback through the administration. Monitor 5th grade flexible grouping model through you guys saying whether or not it's working. And maybe if the 5th grade teachers at some point came in and talked about it at the end of the year or something, that'd be great. Identify current state of learner-centered classrooms at middle school level. Number of opportunities in a typical trimester for a student to direct his or her own learning. You want to talk a little bit about that one?
yeah, I think it's fed from a couple of things. We've been obviously talking about this for a while, and I think we've wrestled with the idea of how homework fits into the big picture. I think that for a couple of years we've been wrestling with the idea of what exactly competency-based education, you know, in its theoretical form, what we're doing here is not really close to what the theoretical form is, but is that what we're shooting for? There's all these questions out there, and I'd love to have sort of our initial draft that we came out of our July, or I guess it was the end of June meeting, was that we were going to set some sort of a goal, like in a couple of years, where are we going to be when it comes to competency-based education at DCS? What is that going to look like? And I think what I have here is what we came up with, I'm not really trying to answer that question, but I think that's for the school to do, for the administration, the committee, the teachers, and maybe the community. I don't know how that's going to be determined, but that's a sort of multi-year process. But I think to have a benchmark for right now, where are we when it comes to competence-based education, some numbers or something to look at, what does it look like right now, and then if we've then created this goal for ourselves, what will then it begin to look like in the next couple of years? I'm happy to change. I'm not attached to that particular idea, but how do you start to try to quantify the idea of competency education? And to me, if you look it up, competency education is really about the learner knowing where he or she needs to go, where he or she is at the moment, and how he or she will get there. And so to try to support that as much as possible, but to get some data, that's where that idea came from. But it's certainly flexible, not attached to that particular metric. But I'd love to have sort of a benchmark, like where are we right now when it comes to competence-based education, and then we can see how that changes over the next couple of years. And I'd be willing to have input from the administration or anybody thoughts on that.
You guys okay with that?
I like it.
Kristen,
It's
you want to weigh in on
Place
that?
to start, anyways.
yeah, it's hard to plan when you don't know what you are.
I think we on an individual level know where we are, but collectively is kind of where we're talking about. Use results of NELM study to make reasonable near-term adjustments. The NELMS report is coming back. It's going to be discussed with the staff and the administration, and then coming out of that, the administration will have suggestions, and we would probably have suggestions once we get it to make some start. What can we do in the short term off of that? find a way to provide consistent and effective after-school academic support for middle school students. I love the idea of the after-school program becoming more robust and having more of an academic support portion to it. I'd like to see it really get meatier this year. We've had it for a couple of years now. I feel like the structure is there. I think that leveraging or throwing money at well, it's not a lot of money, but look, talking to the interns. We're going to have a lot of interns this year, seeing if some of them are interested in being after-school tutors for middle school kids that are struggling. I'm not asking you to do it because you're here enough, but thinking of outside of the box and some creative ways to bring in a resource that allows kids who are struggling to have help on their work.
I think it goes well with the competency education, but it also goes well with the homework question. Like if a kid is struggling, goes home and doesn't necessarily have the support that maybe he or she would like, or we hear about this new math that we can't figure it out ourselves, we can't help our kids. So what if we had a teacher or somebody who was here for an hour after school, an hour and a half every day, that students could get their homework done before they go home, and then there's not even that issue outside of school. It would seem to solve a lot of problems if we could. I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like we could get, like you were saying, outside of the box and think about different ways of helping support our learners get what they need to go.
The after-school thing could require two of the upper middle schoolers that could help with the younger kids. Maybe like
There's a lot of
maybe
different
help
ways
out
that it
learning.
can be
Yeah, I think
structured.
it would be right off the whole peer and mentoring program that they do 5th grade with buddies and move up, and just thinking maybe they can be allowed to stay after school and help the older kids.
Any questions or changes anybody wants to make on one?
We had talked about, and I'm not sure if it's under 1 or 2 or maybe a separate subject, but we had talked about more trying to get more feedback from and working it into the curriculum on gaps. Particularly we had talked about 9th grade, getting the feedback from the 9th grade about what do you feel you weren't prepared for, and taking that feedback and making adjustments to the curriculum. Is that something that we want to address here, or do you want to develop that more before we actually make it a measurable goal? That's a good question. So really the overall, the big picture item is developing not just the feedback from high school to 8th grade, but
The gaps.
again, I guess getting more transparency or better communication of the feedback from the higher grades saying, hey, I know we have a good plan of progress going forward, but how do we get the fact of it going back to the lower grades of this student still struggles with this competency, at this level, and maybe it's baked into the system, I'm not sure, but how do we address when the higher grades are still having to address competencies that they should have been proficient at?
So are you just asking for it to be put in, like the verbiage put in, that we keep an eye on that and to see how that goes down?
Well, see, that's what I'm not sure what that kind of feedback loop looks like, and how you can quantify it. And I know all the teachers have, peer-to-peer. I think we mentioned like peer-to-peer discussions at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. So I know some of that communication goes on, but is there a way?
Come on in.
Is there
You're in the right place.
a more systematic way that can be quantified or brought about? I don't know. I don't know. That's what because you're going to be you want to be constantly making those adjustments and improvements.
I partly feel like when kids leave middle school and they go on to high school, they're faced with a whole new set of confidence. It's like sort of a whole new
game.
Yeah.
And really, you want to develop the skills, obviously, but really, if I like the idea that we're going to be focusing more on, or at least putting into the report card and communicating more clearly what the habits of learning are that we're developing in our middle school population. I think those are things that if we can really make sure those grow in our students and we send them off to high school with that, then that's going to, like, whatever they get, whatever they're faced with freshman year, they can kind of,
But how do you know those are the right ones to
Yeah.
focus on?
Don't. I think
I
it's
guess
something
that's where I'm thinking. How do you know?
Yeah.
You know, how do you?
I feel like last year there was more communication between our school and Concord. And there were a number of times where the math teachers went up and met at the school. So there's been more communication between us and Concord. But it's still probably worth looking at.
I guess we need to work that out a little bit more before we put something concrete in here.
I don't think anything can
'Cause
be
I don't-
concrete. I think it's more like we have to have something basic that we know we can float around, because I think it's going to be moving every year. I think, anyways.
And I think in a lot of ways we don't want to lose the big picture.
Right.
We have to have a sense of where it is.
So we could put a line in there just basically to gain the concepts of that gap and the changes, just to keep in touch. Or maybe it's under communication with high school.
Well, see, that's what I wasn't sure where it was.
We could add a bullet in communication between our school and
High
Concord.
school. Yeah.
For our board and
Our board in the high school.
That's true.
which we,
I'm just going to say that, I won't say it.
all right, so moving on to communication. School to community. Maintain parent forums. Consider video series for parents to view when it's convenient. Chris Motika did a really nice series of videos that I think should get posted again and again. And I think it's fantastic. You're like, hey, how does this work? What is this? And you can see it when you want to, and it's kind of a library of information. I think there are a lot of topics that or maybe
Word in that format.
everyone from the board down could work on. Support creation of the new website.
Do we know how far that is? Or
It's going.
when?
I think there was an email today with an entire new site map put out.
So month, 2 months, you think, or?
I think she'll be well through. I'm not going to put a deadline on it, but I think it would be within the month range.
Awesome.
And that is with the caveat that I'm not putting a deadline on it.
Does that need to be a board goal in that case, if it's basically
I think that what
the wheels are set in motion and it's on autopilot to a certain extent?
well, no, I
was a
think
discussion of ours
what
for a
it's
long
going
time.
to do is raise a lot of questions. Is that it is going to create a nice platform for us, and it will raise questions like you probably will see things where you're like, oh, we're missing this piece or we're missing this piece, and I think as a board we should help support the school to continue it to its finality, to the finish. You know, we're I think getting the site up is going to be great, but then there's like, okay, the teachers, do they need
Adding content and depth and all that.
There's going to be
Okay.
other stuff. So I thought it would be worth keeping it.
No, I agree.
So then you want to say support creation and fine tuning of new website,
Sure.
because it's not going to stop at the creation, which is great.
Right, creation's basically.
It's a long process of tweaking it.
It's creation of growth.
Continuation of improved communication across social media. I would like to take a moment to thank Principal
Friday
for her fantastic posts.
Friday update.
We love them.
Love it.
Friday greedy.
Friday greeting. Love it. It's my favorite part. It's the only thing I go to Facebook for now.
Oh.
Nothing else on Facebook is good except for
I'm going to
that.
have to go back on it then, because I can love it too.
I think it's fantastic. You've taken you're the voice of the school. Keep going. Whatever else you need to help facilitate that, we're here to help you. team to the parents, coordination of formative and summative assessments. Brian and his team have worked extensively on that. It's going to be a lot of communication. Why it's under the communication. Where we all have the unique role of being parents as well as board members, I think we will wear both hats and give you guys feedback in terms of this needs explaining as a parent, other than a board member, and also
C about the Congress School Board or about
yeah, why don't we do that? Continue to improve communication with high school.
Concord.
Concord.
both at the board and at the high school level.
Yeah.
Between the boards and administrations.
The contract does have a caveat that allows for this board and that board to meet once a year. In my
Ever exercise
5
that?
years on the board now, we've never met.
Prior to that, Patty, did that ever?
We've ever met.
Well,
Not to my knowledge.
I think it would be nice to, it probably would require 2 or 3 of, well, if it's board to board, it would require
all of
3
us going in
up there.
We'd also discuss that between the 5 of us, some of us alternating, 1 or 2 of us go to maybe one or two meetings.
I have a
No,
feeling
we
I'm
are.
going to be in Concord quite a bit in the next couple of months. So I'll probably catch a meeting.
I think if you send out an email to us, let us know. Not all of us, I'm sure, can attend, but if we can attend, I think just the presence to hear what's happening, I guess, right?
I mean, it may be as going into these last 2 years before our contract expires, maybe
Right.
maybe after budget season is worth setting a meeting for the contract.
Yeah.
that
April timeframe, right before the
And-
break, maybe?
that discussion for a future contract, basically, we need to kind of start
Well, we need to start
that huge gigantic conversation. If we're 2 years out, we need to start now.
Yeah, well, it should either be
That should be
September
in
or October, or we're gonna have to wait till April.
They're gonna know that, so.
What would you like me to ask her?
Just say we would like to have a meeting with the Concord School Board to discuss the continuation of Deerfield students attending Concord High School.
The relationship.
The relationship. No, because we don't. I don't want to.
That sets precedence. That's
Yeah,
not-
I don't want to say.
That's not intentional.
No.
We just need, it'd be nice to have a meeting.
Yeah.
So, no, we just have chat.
Just communicate.
That'd be an agenda though.
Yeah,
Does it have an agenda?
No, but
she's gonna need to talk to her board about why you want to meet.
Right. You can say that we're coming towards the end of our contract and wanted to begin discussions around what an extension or a continuation of that would look like, as we would like to leave all options on the table. Does that sound good?
Are we looking in April, right before break?
See what they have available.
That's approaching, it sounds like negotiations though.
Okay.
Negotiations with them.
If you're,
I
well, if
think-
you're talking about, you wanna know discuss what the future of the contract would look like, that would be like more of a.
wouldn't we want to start planning that a couple years in advance, regardless of any of this scenario?
We don't want to give the impression that
No, I
we're
don't wanna
going to be entering
negotiate.
negotiations,
Just-
but
There as a board.
how would we word it if we wanted to discuss perceptions? You know, we think our students are doing fine one way. There, you know, any particular issues that they have about Deerfield, and that's why I was saying
The
the
administration's
relationship.
not going to be the one to talk to.
Yeah, that's not a board
the
question.
board.
They usually come in, don't they?
The
Came in a
administration
couple
does
years
come
ago.
in.
Sometime in the next couple
And they
months,
can,
right?
if we give them enough warning, they can solicit information from their administration.
I mean, their board.
I'm just trying to think if we would want to discuss any glaring issues that, without getting into starting negotiations, but we want to uncover any red flags from their point of view that we might want to address later on.
I think if there are any issues,
It would
the
be
superintendent would contact me.
Right.
And if there's any contract discussion, that needs to be the negotiating team for each board. So I would just want to be clear, if you're asking to meet with the board, what the purpose of that would be.
You want us to do on that for a,
We could as per our
Right.
contract,
Right.
there was supposed to be one joint meeting a year.
Yeah.
It's never happened. We thought we would
Start
introduce
it off.
ourselves.
At the very least, we can talk about,
Bring the check.
I'll find the language on the
Just to
contract.
have a meeting.
the,
Right, that's what, yeah, you
There's
can,
no-
it says you can have one, but.
We can, it doesn't say we're supposed to. Does the language say we can have a meeting or that we're supposed to have a meeting?
I'm not sure.
No.
But if there's not a point, then it's gonna be a headache to try to organize to get us all up there and all of them. They've got a big board. Look at us.
I think we're
So we
better
need to have
off.
a point.
I think we're better off maybe attending some of their meetings to see how they're doing.
Okay.
See if it's an offering, or what's their CIP. Maybe we do.
I think we
kind of
also need
angle
to have
on
a
it.
sense of what the heck we're doing before
Right.
we go talking to them. So that was a fun little roundabout there.
I think we should take another brief recess.
Pizza time.
Yes.
Before we finish the rest of this. Okay, thanks for that.
Let's take a quick.
Just put the pizza in the bowl.
Pausing that.
So recess.
35, something like that.
We're now on to the physical plans.
Did we agree to drop C? So there's nothing.
Well,
So do we have enough communication between us and Concord? As
Right,
it stands?
we suggested a line that said continued communication and improved communication between Concord and the school.
Right, but are we? Does the our district feel like we are in close enough contact with the high school?
Well, that's,
No.
these are our goals, not the district.
But if I would be curious to have some input on whether that should be a goal. I haven't felt like it's an issue, but you've got a good point, Ken. That maybe I don't know. So
I feel like that the board should have a presence, or at least a knowledge of what's going on. Okay, regardless of what's going on in this school. Okay.
Maybe we just attend a couple of their meetings.
all right.
Physical plants. Use results 2017-18 engineering and demographic study to coordinate long-term CIP with Deerfield Select Board Planning Board. I have started the chapter. So we will see how far that gets. Identify the projected space needs of the school district for upcoming years given population projections made available in the demographic studies. This is our space needs committee.
We don't have a space needs committee.
Nobody
That's the problem.
showed up.
problem,
Nobody's
and
responding.
the second problem I have is that demographic study was not strong.
I think we need to do a little more.
So
You guys were going to go back to it, or were we all going to go back?
We didn't have anything at that point to go back to on. We had rambled around. You were asking for how many births were done per year, average that. And we kind of side tabled the point because we're trying to form a committee.
Okay.
So,
It's been a couple of months since he delivered a mediocre.
well, Candy had put it in the. No, it was in the weekly letter that she puts out the school app, and she put my email in there asking if anybody. I've got nothing. Thank you.
It's difficult to get a bunch of people for that type of undertaking.
Yeah, that's a huge undertaking.
That very well may not get accepted by the community.
The board of selectmen had a similar challenge for the police committee.
So the question then becomes,
I think we need to continue to look at it because if I'm not mistaken, we have more kids than we've ever had.
absolutely,
Yeah, right. I believe around 535 to 537 right now. And that's the most I have since I've been here.
I thought we were even higher than that. Are the kids that came in over the summer included in that group?
Well, we've had kids move out.
There was a
Charter schools.
there was a positive 12 switch over the summer. A
Yes,
plus
and we've lost 3 just this week.
Okay.
So the numbers have been fluctuating greatly.
We're going to be somewhere between 530 and 540.
I would guess. I would say that's it.
And historically, what was we capped out at one point?
The highest we've ever seen here is about 560.
So we're pushing.
The number on the building, I think, was 450. I think as well.
Capacity.
Capacity.
No, I thought 474 or 476 or something like that was capacity, but we've had as high as about 560, you said.
I think Peter Menard had given me the sheet from the state I think it was back in 2010 or 2011. It was very close to 450 something.
So
We had
where,
to pay.
was that calculating in the modulars?
I don't recall.
Well, it's a hard project, but we need to continue to move forward.
I
So-
agree. I mean, I guess, can I ask if we're not going to get a committee formed?
This falls back to this board.
Yeah, I think we need to kind of keep moving and then
As
it'll
long
come.
as long as we're publicizing our findings and our work and everything like that, that's all
Or do we
above
have
board, right?
one of our bi-weekly meetings, do we turn into a work session for?
I don't
It's
think at this
numbers.
time.
Right now, it's
Right.
number crunching.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
need
right
to
now
establish
it's
a
just.
baseline. We need to do the work
Right.
to establish a baseline. We need to do the research. We need to fill in the gaps of the demographic study, which I think we can do ourselves. I guess that was the point of my question earlier, was do we tackle it?
But who's going to tackle? I mean, who?
It's going to be us too.
All right.
I mean, so don't expect miracles in terms of having a meeting, because
It'll be-
we're going to be, first we're going to have to go back over everything again, and then look, moving forward, take out the pieces that you're looking in the CIP, and then just look at the space needs, and then we talked about, option A and option B. I mean,
If we get
shoot for
if
what
we
we'd
get-
like to see, knowing what we can get option B. And we know we probably could put an addition comfortably with, minimal impact. I'm gonna say that, but I mean, it's an impact.
we are, the one other thing that I'll throw out there is that we're in the high 530s to 540. We are smaller in space than we were when we peaked out because we sent the modular over.
Right.
We lost 30 seats basically.
So we are effectively at the same density we were then.
And that was
Right
thrown out 4 or 5 years ago with the module. It wasn't recent, so we've just been expanding.
Okay. I think we're not going to solve it tonight, but I think it should be one of our goals.
One of the other, as a space needs thing, as much as we all hate modulars, but on a short-term solution, should we be looking at it as budgetary? This is just a budgetary key.
Can't bring them back in because there's no septic.
Those
are grandfathered in, not having.
Do we make the investment to figure out how to tie it all back in and do it that way?
I think we're playing with fire, trying to pump it up the hill. It's one thing with the water, because we had a well. I think that would be fairly simple. But no way.
And if you're going to spend,
I
You can
think
spend that kind of money.
that's a budget question. We're just talking about what our goals are.
This goal is just identifying the needs. Is that all we want to shoot for this year? Just identify what our needs are? Or do we actually want to act on it?
I think if we can get
It's
to
a
the
realistic
acting,
goal.
I think we get to the acting. Because I would like, if a miracle happens,
I think the goal remains identify, and the stretch goal is the act.
Yeah, you're acting.
I would like to see something in March, come voting.
Yeah, it's just as
All of our work put together on we're not saying anything. We're not saying, hey, we're going to build a $50 million school. But here's what we're projecting. And then we give it to people to see when they go vote. If they're hearing it, they're not going to hear it until we put it out there. Because they would have at least come.
I'm comfortable with the bar that sets, and if we do more than that, then
Great.
good on us. Long-term planning, prepare and review draft capital improvement plan in September. I'm working on that. Continue to discuss high school options. We had a couple of parent forums last year, and we think we should continue to have that as an open discussion to
Keep used as possible.
and keep engaged with the community and listen to what people are interested in.
And eventually figure out where it is that what do we want to do moving forward? We do need to figure that out. As a board, what do we want to do?
Yeah. On the meeting, it was pretty blatant from the town what they were looking for. The people that showed up at the meeting.
Right. We have to continue to. And then using NELM's results, create 3-year plan for CD at the middle school level. That's gonna be you guys. Any changes to the goals as presented? I would consider a motion to accept the goals.
Second.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You really want to do this?
We're all fueled up now, so we're good.
All right,
We're not gonna be.
Now we're gonna fall.
homework policy, IKB.
Well, he might still be.
I'm so hangry. No.
We had put it on the agenda last time with some suggested edits at the behest of the staff. The copy that was handed out today is just the original. It does not have these suggested edits, but if I remember correctly, it
It
was
should be in your drive.
So
the last 4 lines.
so can I?
Yes, go ahead.
So, as a discussion item revolving around this policy, and this is where I struggle with this. We invested a tremendous amount of time trying to get all of our students to be proficient. We spend a tremendous amount of time working with the students that probably could benefit the most from homework to help them become proficient. By not reinforcing homework as being required work, by not making it count, we're investing time inside the building and potentially losing that investment outside the building. And that's why I struggle with this policy the way it is. It's why I struggle with homework doesn't count, because we're putting in blood, sweat, and tears here, and we're losing that investment outside the building. Okay? So,
That's why we can be face
yeah,
to
you're getting out of firing range?
Yeah.
So that's where my issue is. If we collectively as a group, if best practice is homework doesn't count, then don't do homework at all. And that's where, again, I struggle. But I'm hung up on there's a value to homework. The kids that aren't doing it are the ones that we're losing. We need to reinforce it. It needs to carry some weight. Otherwise, it's not going to get done. And that investment in those kids is lost. And I don't want to lose those kids. And I don't want to lose that investment in our time. I don't want to lose that investment in resources. We need to reinforce it. So my stance on it is until we determine what homework is, the policy is irrelevant, because we need to determine what does homework really mean.
I agree with that statement that it is one small piece of a much larger picture about what it is that we're doing here. And to what extent are we incorporating competency-based education in their school system? And until that is figured out in some holistic, big picture kind of way, this small piece is not, I know that it doesn't play the role that you, I think, are envisioning, or that you know, yes, I agree that I don't want the kids that were working the hardest to serve to lose out because they're not, but at the same time, it's such a bigger discussion than just this one small piece that I don't think this is the place to be nitpicking that question. I think it's a bigger discussion. That we just established in our goals will be happening over the next, immediately what we can do, but also a 3-year goal. What is education at the school looking like in 3 years?
I don't want to wait 3 years. I don't want to lose 3 years of time with these kids.
That this Band-Aid isn't going to change anything.
I know, and this is why I struggle with it. This is why every time this thing has come up, we kicked it back and forth, and some of us are on one side of the table, and some of us are on the other side of the table. Ken's sitting off all by himself now.
I'm still here, so that we could look each other right.
Shall yeah.
So say you were to make homework count grade-wise. Say it's 10% of your grade. What does that do for a kid? Essentially, what I'm getting at is you can have a student here that can not take school serious and get ones on every competency and still go to Concord. So it kind of goes back to your question of what is education as a big picture. There's nothing preventing a student from going to Concord High School. They can just literally sit there and not do any work all day long, and there's no consequence to their actions. So adding 10% is that gonna change,
I have a,
or 20% or 30%, is that gonna change any kid's mindset on homework?
I'm gonna add it.
So I'm just throwing this out
Yeah,
there, idea.
and I agree.
And I think that goes back to
I
what
don't
Dave
think
was
it
saying.
has anything as much to do with the student as it does as a tool for the teacher. If we're taking away something, especially the middle schools, where they've already got, we know everything attitude. I know I got my own. You might have one. So if homework doesn't count, then you're arguing it with your child. But then what are the teachers having to do with it in school? So we know there's gaps. Put something in place and it's not really fully in place. And then we saw that last year with students having 8, 10, 40 missing assignments. But who cares if they're missing? There's homework. Right?
But we've addressed that.
well, we haven't, because 2 weeks ago, we agreed that, yes, we have this policy, but once the assessment's done, the missing assignments don't matter
It
anyway.
goes away.
And it all goes away, and homework still, there's no
It
reinforcement.
only, correct me if I'm wrong, but it only goes away if they achieve a certain level on the
No, it does
No,
not.
it just goes away.
It never went away. I mean, it got to the point
They
where
just
the end
can't
of the year,
reassess.
and they
At
just
the end of the trimester,
Right.
it goes away.
It goes away. And so we're spending, say, 20%, 80% of our energy is spent on, say, 30% of the student population. There's, whatever the exact breakdown is, but say it's 70 on 30, whatever it might be. So we're applying all this effort to help those 30 kids, which we have to do. That's the right thing to do, right? That's what we're here for. And we're doing it. And if we're doing it here and we're losing it when we send them home, but we still have 70% of our kids that aren't getting the additional help that they could benefit from to really grow and really be progressed and really push and really move, because we have to give that energy to the other kids. And I have no problem with that, but I don't want to give them that energy at the expense of the other kids and not reinforce that and not do everything we can to try to make them successful. The whole goal.
So how does homework do that?
Because we see, we know, we ask, right? The kids that were losing last year, the kids that weren't succeeding were the ones that weren't doing their homework. And the kids that were succeeding were the ones that were doing their homework. Now, I think homework needs to be differentiated. And I think it needs to matter, it needs to count for something.
and that's
Can I interrupt you 1 second? I don't think I've ever heard them say that the kids that were succeeding were the ones who were doing the homework, and the kids that weren't succeeding were the ones who weren't.
We asked that.
Well, we definitely had a drop off of kids who weren't doing the homework, like Ellen
Right.
and her flip
But
class.
was there a direct correlation to
Yes, there were kids simply not
We asked that
Yeah,
question
we had
last
that
year.
meeting.
failing the test and,
Right.
just moving on?
Okay, so that's
and
gonna,
just reassessing because now they know what was on the test and they go back and like, oh, look at that section.
And all that is homework being done repetitiously in an ironic way, but not to get deep, because I know it's going to get deeper real quick. If the teachers show up in here and say to us, homework does not help us teach these kids, I'm totally on board with what you're saying. No, I'm just making a point to say, we're hearing from these guys, and we've heard from the parents, and we're parents, and most of us sitting here didn't understand the whole, how the grading was going until recently. My point is are we putting these teachers who don't have multiple aides or other teachers in the room to help with the kids that are maybe not as ahead, or the kids that are advanced that are sitting there watching paint dry? Because some of these kids weren't assigning their homework because they're like, well, whatever, I'll do it at last minute. And I hate to see that gap come until we have the full thing in place.
And then,
I'm afraid to lose sight of what grading is about.
I don't want to say grading anymore. Trying to
But
use
when you're talking about counting, what does that mean to you? Do you want, because you think that
Not a
they
count.
need to be punished somehow if they don't do their homework?
No,
So
that's
if they don't do their homework, if you want it to count towards their grade, then you're in fact saying, okay, your student is at a level 3, they're competent, but I'm not gonna tell you that because they don't do their homework, so now I'm gonna put them at a level 2, so you really don't know. It's a reporting mechanism more than it is like accounting.
but this is
for
that
grade.
huge philosophical question that and I'll 100%, I struggle with it. Maybe I just don't get it, but I feel like we're not maximizing the potential for the kids.
What does it mean to you that whether or not homework counts? How would you
It's-
know that
I don't
it
think
counts?
It's not,
Accountability is-
when I say count, if we know, if we can see statistically, right, that the kids that aren't doing the homework, they're not doing the extra work, are not doing as well, then the first fix is to start reinforcing the additional work outside of the building. And so how you count it, I don't necessarily, does it have to be, this is that big conversation, right? Does it have to be a grade? Do you have to give it, does it have to be 10% of your grade? I don't know, but whether it's more carrot, more stick, but there has to be something there, right? So that.
But you're going to see,
Oh.
you're going to see the value of homework in the increase in competence, moving from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. We know that's going to be done when those kids do that homework. I agree totally with Patty that counting it as part of the final grade, that 10%, which is pretty traditional, that's a reporting. That's all you're doing is checking off that the work was done. It doesn't address the value.
Yeah, but that's an account. It's not. We had a conversation after the meeting this first started, and the word accountability or making it count really was, and I wish I could remember.
But that's gonna be part of the
It's
habits
just
of
a
learning.
tool. It's just a tool.
It-
All I'm asking.
But it comes in a different area. It comes in that habit of learning.
Whatever they tell those students, whether we don't call it homework anymore. I don't care. We can call it whatever.
Tuna fish.
It just needs to be part of that tool that helps that teacher provide that student with more work they need to do to keep excelling up, or help the student that can't get off a level 1 or a level 2. You know, that's all I would say.
It's all about looking at that correlation and reading too much causation into it. Just because somebody's doing his homework doesn't actually how confident can we be that doing homework causes you to do better?
Well, that's why I
Or
said
is
tool.
it more like a
It's-
student who is doing homework is doing his homework because he is doing better?
So here's
and there's some
the
other
second
cause.
part of the equation. So we have the student that struggles,
Yeah.
and they're not doing their homework.
Yeah.
And so now we have our educator consuming their bandwidth during the day. Because the one thing we have, all of us, is a very finite amount of his time. So that educator has X amount of time to try to evenly distribute amongst all the students because they all deserve an equal amount of the educator's attention.
That's gotta be hard.
Right? And so now we have, and there's no way to quantify this mathematically, right? But I can tell you that the students that maybe need more reinforcement at home that aren't doing it because they don't have to, because that's just unfortunately the way that child is, whether it's not reinforced at home.
just circumstance.
Right, it's circumstance. But now that student is here and that student is taking up a significant amount of the excess bandwidth that educator has, and that educator can't spend that time working with the rest of the kids to help progress their education. And so you can either fill the building with educators and have, a 3-to-1 ratio, but that is nowhere near cost effective, or we have to find a way to maximize the bandwidth that we have, because we have a very finite amount of time in front of the students with the educators.
But we had a presentation 2 weeks ago where they've come up with a solution to provide a space within the schedule for kids that aren't doing their homework to address the homework in both magnet and free time and flex time. Like that piece was not in place last year. So we have
That's where you're saying homework, and I hate to use the word, because of that, that's where we talked about last year. That wasn't in place. So homework didn't count, but we had to assign it. And I even hate to say homework because it's really not homework. It's if they're not passing the assessment test, then they're having that student go back to reevaluate that module or that chapter, whatever we're calling it.
And this is a bigger conversation than
It
just
is.
homework.
Well, no, I think we got to look at the
It's
big
what
picture.
Nate alluded to is how does this entire process look? And the administration has come with a proposal that accommodates time in the schedule for kids who are not doing things to deal with it in non-educational, well, not non-educational, but in non-core teaching time. So where you're talking about your teacher losing a ton of bandwidth because they're dealing with Joe Schmo who hasn't done anything and they got to slow way the heck down, that kid is going to have time within the structure of an 8-hour day, they're here for 8 hours basically, to,
So I have a question, because I apologize, I was not here. How does that work? Is that gonna be done during, let's just go with math.
so they, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it was presented is, if a kid didn't do their work, doesn't get a good enough score on the summary, they have to, before they can reassess, all of the formative work needs to be done. Formative work, if they're missing too many of them, gets addressed during that time. Like you're missing 5 or 6 assignments. You're going to sit there during the time the rest of the kids are doing, I don't know what they do.
So are they in the same classroom? They're being taken out of a classroom? They're working with a separate teacher?
They'll be, so they'll be working with, we have to iron all that out with the staff, but essentially, so they'll probably rotate. The staff will probably rotate. The 7th and 8th grade team will rotate through and say, all right, Ms. Dudley and Ms. Hughes are in this week, the next 2 weeks maybe, and the other kids are out with the teachers. And during that time, these 2 teachers are there to assist.
So we're
So
talking.
they're not missing instructional time.
No, that's fine with that, but they're not also being segregated and
But we're baking.
putting into a peer issue, is what I wanna
But
know.
how much
But-
time is that in a week?
Well, it's all relevant.
That
It all depends.
Every Friday.
it's an hour every Friday.
Every Friday?
But we've earlier we're looking at the workload for homework for a high school student is, I think the number was middle school student
7 to 11.
7 to 11 hours. So if that kid doesn't do anything Monday through Friday, we're going to try to correct it.
They'll get maybe 1 or 2 assignments done.
Yeah, and so we're still back to that.
Right. But we're also, we're a
What else
school,
can
we're not
you
babysitting service.
Right.
That's a parent's responsibility. We can only do so much.
Well,
I get it, but but we.
I don't think you can argue that one.
No, listen.
Back
I
off
have
that
no
one.
problem
You
saying
might have a problem.
we're not a
Yeah.
daycare center, but
Absolutely.
but I am not willing, and I genuinely believe that not weighting it somehow, we are.
But it is being somewhat weighted, because
But-
not calling it homework, calling it what you just called it, formative. So in reality, that is. Am I correct to say that? I mean, let's just, first of all, take IKB and let's just put it in the trash, because
formative.
if we're gonna go this way, no, because what they're saying is if they can't pass the assessment, they're going to work with it, with the student, and I would assume it was formative. So they can get to that point where they can understand the assessment test, is that
which is the whole goal of competency-based education.
competency-based. So in reality, there is no homework anymore. Do we agree to that?
There's work. There's work
But
that
there's no
supports
homework, it's just,
becoming competent within a certain area, and that is tested in the summative work.
And some time for that is provided in class.
Absolutely.
So it's not even necessarily at home, it's in class, it's,
So
if we stay on that
And the
plan,
student, I mean, there's times, like I said, where math class still have 15 minutes, and most kids, if they wanted to, could get their work done in that 15 minutes.
And there's a part of me that wants that to be instructional time. Like that's the time in front of the teacher. So
But that's time
But
in
that
the
is,
classroom.
That's the best place where the student is actually trying it at,
Right,
making
in the
the
class.
mistakes with the teacher there, who is the expert. When the student goes home and makes those mistakes at home with parents who actually maybe can't necessarily help, then that student is practicing the wrong skill and actually not learning what we want. So it's better, that is better learning than at home.
and I can see that, but I still feel like, so if you take 10 minutes out of that class, you're losing 5 days a week. You're
And
losing.
that's back to this
15
core
minutes of
discussion
this.
about what does education in this building look like.
At which point I am going to stop this discussion and say if there is an amendment to IKB or changes that we would like to make, please make them now or we're going to move on.
I move that we strike that last sentence as requested by the faculty.
And I would table
I just assume
We have a motion to strike the last sentence. Do we have a second?
The very last sentence.
Would
No,
become
it's
while
on
there are multiple ways of accomplishing that.
Yeah,
I guess that's all one sentence.
While there are multiple ways, that last sentence was the one that the teachers last
Yeah,
meeting wanted to eliminate because they thought it introduced too much flexibility.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We're now discussing the removal of the last 4 lines of IKB. Any discussion? All in favor of removing the last 4 lines of IKB? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It's a real policy at this point for me.
Abstained?
Well,
I like the sentence in there because it gives the teachers an
You're
hour.
opposed?
I'm not voting against it. That policy, it's only on a second reading anyway at
I
this
just don't
point,
want to say
right?
homework. That's my
We can
vote.
vote on the second reading.
Because it's not homework anymore, it's part of the tool that they're using.
That was a recommendation for the teachers, changing IKG to say formative assessments at the top.
Absolutely. I think it's great that you're actually putting something in place because last year was atrocious. And if we're going to watch it work this year, then I think we'll be able to fine tune this policy. But I think until then, we can't let this.
Change it to permanent.
That's what the
I did
teachers,
not change it to formative. It was left as homework for now.
Right.
yeah, but the teachers, that was one of the requests to change the word.
I do want to add to note,
Because I think it is.
we did ask the educators that were here presenting last week, and they all said that we should wait that somehow.
Really no.
I would like to see a proposal of how a weighted homework would look.
Well, I'd like the administration to weigh in on that.
I'd like to see what is education looking like in this building. It's a bigger discussion, and it's gonna be different than when we were in school.
I'm okay with
What we're gonna
that.
see in this building, I think it's gonna be different. And so-
I agree. And I agree with Nate because I don't think this is homework, quote unquote, anymore. It's not. It's
So do
literally
we
a tool,
want to,
so.
I haven't moved on yet, do we want to change that from homework to formative? IKB formative.
I would consider that, yes. And we can talk.
Somebody needs to make a motion.
How did you leave that out for a reason?
Yep.
Okay.
Because we've been having a lot of discussion about homework specifically, and we've always had a homework policy, so I thought that was a part of a bigger discussion.
All right. Are you removing your motion?
No, we didn't make any.
Okay. We're moving on.
Do we need to accept policy?
We voted, it was 3-2.
That was just on the amendment.
Yeah, sorry. We don't, the policy's already accepted. We don't need to accept it. It's an existing policy, plus we
Yeah,
edited
they
it,
accept the amendment, right?
right?
We proposed the amendment,
We voted on the
that was
amendment,
the policy we brought forward, that you voted on.
but it's a policy that's already
Yes,
in place. So we changed the policy. We don't need to accept the policy.
correct.
It's already accepted. Right?
Don't like it.
Okay. Looking at me like I'm speaking Greek. Kind of am. Informational items.
So,
Public,
Oh, barbecue.
yeah, the barbecue.
We already did that.
Can I just, a couple of, I guess, quick things for informational items?
I have a little, like last time too, little.
These are very quick housekeeping things. We talked with Mike a month and a half ago about what we were doing and where we were getting going. Can we get an update on that?
Yeah, Mike has been, one of Mike's big projects has been dealing with the septic. And it took him probably a good 4 days just to figure out one issue.
Okay.
So it's been resolved, but it's eaten up a chunk of.
Bandwidth? Okay.
And then, yeah, so.
He's been reminded that he needs to bring something forward.
The other, what?
So that'll be all right if he's under that.
Yeah,
We'll meet this again.
yeah, I don't want that to get forgotten. The other thing is, and I noticed it Sunday when I was up there, up on the upper field, the third base line is the spot where the fence is dropped. We need to just have that fixed, have a fence company figure it out, but it just needs to be repaired.
Is it climbing or is it?
No, it's
Been like that for a while.
It's settled. It's been like that for a while. I looked at it the other day. If the fence company comes, they can peel the chain link back, cut the pipe, pull it, reset the post, put it back together. It probably wouldn't cost that much money. There's also a divot there that's about the same size as a child's ankle. So we need to address that at the same time, just as a quick safety type of item. And then I'd have them walk the rest of the fence line if there's anything else, but just, we need to address that.
I also ask,
Oh, I'm sorry, I had two other things. Two other,
this is related to the fence.
I'm working my way to the, let me finish my
The
thoughts.
third,
You guys keep talking and I'm going to cut you all
Put
off.
one on that side next time.
If we can reach out, or if you guys can look at it, the board, however you want to handle it, the stairs that we put in a couple years ago, we had one oversight when we put the stairs in, because the sun can go through the stairs, because they are open mesh.
Oh, there's things growing?
The weeds are now trying to grow back through. So the company that does our fertilization can nuke, basically, the underside of that. I don't know what the cost is, but there's crabgrass that is starting to come through. It's not looking, so I think we need to have that done. And then the infield, we should have them do at the same time. Because the infield's getting the fields look great right now. The fertilizing is really starting to have an impact.
How much time do you need for dry time? Because tryouts are like the day after the first day of school.
It's probably not long. I mean, it's probably within 12 hours or whatever. But
It's not close to a water source or anything, just spray it.
It's not like there's a river right there.
No kidding.
they will use what is appropriate. Do we need to move to get it done? Do we have to discuss it? It's not necessarily in the budget, but it's a housekeeping thing. No, it needs to be treated. And then same thing with the infield up top, should just be treated like twice a year, then there won't be anything there, the stuff will kind of. No, it's fertilized, but we're not having them.
Like the base path?
Yeah.
That's where like the money is sliding. That's where we want the toxic.
It's not that toxic, it's fine. That's just, the Red Sox run on it all the time, it's fine, just nuke it. Apparently I'm not as organic as some of the other members here.
Can it be done with like,
That's why your lawn is
I don't think we need a motion.
That's why your lawn
Talk
glows at night.
It is.
It's like it glows.
You find my house at night.
Alright, one other
what is
quick
it
question,
measure?
when you have the fence company, they could do a, estimate of what it would take to extend up the fence along the first baseline for protection. We did have somebody get hit by a pass ball there a couple of years ago. Just, a couple lengths down basically to protect the bleachers from the dugout down past first base.
The bathroom, the outhouse.
Yeah, basically to where the
I'm like getting clunked off.
Because
So
of the
here's
first
the-
base,
Yeah.
Knocked
Knocked
it
out
right
the
down the outhouse, right?
either somebody's gonna get hurt or a vehicle's gonna get damaged, so.
Or
Yeah,
netting
netting
would
would
be
be, would be fine.
And if you're gonna do netting, you might as well put it behind the soccer goal too.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
that's the most interesting.
Yeah, even, and you
Sorry,
could,
it's
you
just
could,
my housekeeping things. I was up
you
there
could use
Sunday,
the
some
same-
old
You did
homes.
mention
Okay.
it.
So
Yeah,
before these are
Done.
Okay, but Zach kind of wants us to. What's the sense of the board on spraying stuff?
Get it done, can you get it done before school starts?
If you guys called True Green, I'm assuming I think does the fertilization. If you call them, Kemlon, True Green.
Is everybody in favor of nuking the infield and under the stairs? I am not.
We are fertilizing it already anyway.
Fertilization's
I
probably
am
worse.
not. Is everybody else? What do you think? Yes or no?
You're using True Greens on this?
That's True Green, that's a contract.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that, because I know what
So am
the
I. It's not, they're not gonna use anything that's not safe. It's so heavily regulated.
It's the same stuff they use around pets.
Ken?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, you got 3 people. Yes or no?
I'm not a big fan, but I
I'm
don't know.
not a fan.
The kids will not be under the stairs, I assure you.
Give them a call. Have them clean it up.
and well, what happens is they can come out until school starts. We still can.
Do they do it on the weekends? I think it's a 24-hour.
Right, yeah. So
Figure it out.
If we get,
Figure it out.
It's usually like a 24-hour.
Okay, Kristen, your report.
Yeah, I, over the last 2 weeks, I've continued my meet and greets with the teachers and the staff members who've been coming in. Third grade was here, calendaring some work with reading and writing, working with Mrs. Davis. Brian and Trish and I went to the W.B. Mason Consumer Show at Fenway. Mr. Grieve wore his New York shirt, but don't worry, his son wore a Boston shirt.
Thank God.
you did point out that Boston stinks.
It smells like skunks or something like that. So we had a great day. Fenway Franks and we met our W. Mason rep and got some free samples and picked up some catalogs. And Trish, what was the next thing you wanted? Last year she got the stand-up desk.
This year, like, things that spray out the bathrooms.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Trish.
A team of people have met with together to update the emergency operation plan, which needs to be done yearly. Danny Gregg in town was here last week, along with Matt Fisher and a couple of staff members here. We'll continue that work in early September. One of the things that we're trying to incorporate. The state came out with 57 recommendations to add to an emergency operation plan. We do have a lot of them, but the big push is to get a mental health piece in there. Our guidance counselors were at this meeting and say they have a crisis plan in place that could easily be integrated into the emergency operation plan. So we're going to get that updated and approved for you, with you. Bless you. Yesterday we had our new teachers in for the day. They were doing new teacher orientation, and Paul Yerjo was here with his UNH interns. We have 7 new UNH interns in the fall.
Tutors.
Yeah, ranging from kindergarten on up, and a couple in with art. And then the mentors were here as well to have lunch with their mentees, whoever their mentee was. So it was a wonderful day. Patty joined us as well, and then we followed up with a leadership meeting after that. And then Erica and Heidi were in doing a Eureka training with some more teachers who didn't attend this summer. A couple paras came, spent the day here learning about getting acclimated with the Eureka math training. And we had our fire chief here yesterday for a little visit. He did a little inspection. Walked around with Mike. I joined him for a good amount of time. Brian joined in at one point as well. And he also had, it wasn't the state level fire person. It was, who was that underneath him? Was it the assistant? I don't know what his official
Fire marshal.
But we had somebody here from the state helping because Matt had never done a fire inspection for a school. So he was here to walk him around and show him different things. We turned off lights and to make sure the emergency lights worked and the exit signs worked and the doors worked. And so that happened in the last 2 weeks. That's all I got.
I don't know if I missed the information. Hallmark training, what is that?
Yep, next week we have our agenda for Monday and Tuesday with the teachers, and that will be in there as well. So we have an training and Eureka training and conversations in middle school. We have the whole agenda for the 2 days, including time for teachers in their classroom.
And then
I think on the agenda next time we should have a principal.
Yeah, I asked Kathy I just made a note to add that back on.
Put you back up top. Barry, any questions for Kristen?
are we did the Alice training at the end of the year, and have you been Alice certified?
Sure, yes.
You are now. Okay, so will that be something annually that we redo with the staff, or what's our?
Yes, and we will start. I will be meeting with the crisis team, and we will be doing drills.
Okay.
But drills don't look like a traditional fire drill. It's essentially how we work with the kindergartners and show them how to get out of the building in a safe manner with their teachers and go to a rendezvous point. And then I would work with the second grade and do the same thing. And then as a whole entire hallway, then you do that whole operation. So it's a very timely, organized, and parents will be notified ahead of time.
Like a once a year type thing you'll do, or?
That whole process to get the whole school done will probably take about two months.
Okay.
So on top of normal fire drills and stuff like that. So, but then we would do it annually in trainings and keep the teachers up to date.
Awesome.
So it's a big process.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay for people out, but also you want to keep people safe.
Right.
And when you tell kids to run, they're going to run. So
Right.
there's a whole piece to it. So we work as a team work with that. So.
Public comments. All right.
Chilling in the
Non-public. Do we need non-public? Don't need non-public. That's awesome. Appointments and resignations.
Okay.
Do it.
I move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Done.
You can do some.